I'm going to turn things over to Dr. James Orr, theologian from the University of Cambridge.
Thank you, Stephen. You flatter me. I would never aspire to be a theologian, a doyen of the Queen of the Sciences. I am a lowly philosopher, clearing the rubble for the Queen of the Sciences, merely a handmaiden. Whatever the male version, we've got to get these things right these days. I bring you greetings from the Britannic edge of the global American empire. We, your loyal colonials of the 51st state, salute you. I say 51st, but we might now be 53rd. I don't know. It looks like Canada and Panama might be bumping us down that list. But it's wonderful to be here. It's a thrill to see old friends and to meet new ones. I have been wanting to come here for a number of years. Stephen and I go back at least 5 or 6 years when this extraordinary vision was simply that, a vision. As just a seed in his mind. And we all thought, we thought he was just a little bit mad. I mean, can anything really be done to save the universities? Could we even develop the slightest antidote? Could we even build a tiny, tiny bunker? No, surely not. These were the dark days of 2018, 2019, 2020, when I, David, and others were in the trenches and engaged in all sorts of tantrums and battles on the issue of academic freedom and free speech. The Cultural Revolution had broken across the campuses of the West in 2012, 2013, and was really reaching its peak in that period. There are all sorts of reasons for optimism, and I want to come back to those in a minute, if I may. Things are bleak, however. They're certainly bleak in Britain. And as I was on my way here, flying in from JFK, I thought back to that glorious sunny summer, the very first term of the first Ralston cohort in Samos. This must have been 2022, I think August 2022. And we had a wonderful trip to Patmos. And as I was in Patmos, I dug up that wonderful poem by Friedrich Hölderlin, which some of you might know. And there's some very famous lines from it, made famous by that avuncular old Nazi Martin Heidegger in his 1934 essay, The Question Concerning Technology. But they are wonderful lines. And if you'll excuse my atrocious German accent, I think it's important that I utter them in the original and will attempt a translation after. This is Hölderlin, Patmos. Nah ist und schwer zu fassen der Gott. Wo aber Gefahr ist, wächst das Rettende auch. What does that mean? It's very pregnant poetry. Near is and difficult to grasp is the God. But where there is danger, salvation grows as well. It's a wonderful poem. Of course, it's titled Patmos. John is writing on Patmos probably in the mid-90s AD at a time of intense persecution. The early Christian revolution looked as if it was going to be collapsing under the Domitian's reign of terror. But what is the book of Revelation but this extraordinary vision of confidence and swagger that the empire would be transcended by this motley band of mystics in a cave on a distant Greek island. And that relationship between extreme peril and hope, salvation, is one that I think emerges in times of crisis. I am wary of making points about Greek in a room full of aspiring Hellenists, and certainly with this man over here. But in dusting down my undergraduate Greek, I remember that krisis, originally, krisis in Greek, of course, comes from krinein, kritein, to judge. Crisis, it's a moment of judgment. And I always love the way, if you just turn one of those letters, you swap in a tau for the rho. You go from krisis to ktesis, the Greek New Testament word for creation. Crisis is a time for us to pause, reflect, try to understand and diagnose the ills of our age with a view to rescuing and redeeming them and creating something new. Of course, the final note of the book of Revelation is that vision of new creation when there will be no more tears. So what does that look like? Well, the sort of schema that I have in my mind when thinking about the institutional wreckage littering the West at the moment is broadly sort of it's a threefold matrix. I think back to the 1520s and those three strands of the Reformation beginning to emerge. What do we do with this enormous institution, huge, undefeatable, the Catholic Church? How do we respond to its corruption or what we see needs fixing? And I think there were basically three approaches. One, let's say the Lutheran option or maybe the Erasmian humanist option. We can fix this. We just need to stay in Cambridge, David. We can fix this. We just need another centre. We need a more muscular free speech statement. That will do it. We need to ditch this vice-chancellor. I'm pleased to say we've actually achieved all of those to some degree. And things are a little bit better. And that is an option, I think. This is sort of the Lutheran option. It's what is sometimes referred to as the loyalty option. You can change the corporation from within by showing your ostentatious displays of loyalty and say, I've got your interests at heart, listen to me. The second option is something like the Calvinist option. No, this institution is irredeemably broken. Can't be fixed. We need a Geneva. We need something new. We need to build another institution. And I'm thrilled to see here in the United States that there are indeed parallel structures emerging, and I see Ralston partly, not entirely, I'll explain why shortly, as a new Geneva of sorts, an opportunity to start entirely afresh. And I have a secret envy now and then for what David decided to do, even to join a new Geneva, to explore it. There used to be a joke going around Cambridge 5 years ago that there were 5 dissidents. David and I were part of the Cambridge Five, so-called Cambridge Five. This was an awkward phrase, and a journalist at The Economist wanted to use it in an article that he was writing, and we urged him to desist on the basis it would not be helpful that to be associated with the Cambridge spies of the 1930s. And our politics was somewhat different from Gilbert, from Burgess and Maclean and Philby and so on. But that takes me on to my third option, this third alternative, what you might call the Anabaptist option, where the diagnosis is roughly, no, the problem here is just institutions. It's the institutional framework. That's the problem. What we need is a network. We need something much more diffuse and dispersed. In that great image of Sir Neil Ferguson, we need to spend more time on the square and less time in the tower. We need to recognize that actually real historical change in the past has very often occurred through a band of dedicated people who are not tied to lumbering institutions that tend to move slowly in times of crisis and tend to be very reluctant to consider options for ktesis. So those are the three options. And I think that third option, what does that third option look like in the 21st century? Well, I think of them as digital Anabaptists, this extraordinary emerging ecosystem of Substacks and podcasts and new media, which is having an electric impact, I think, on the digital public square. But what we have here at Ralston is, as it were, a blend of those three options, and that is what is so thrilling to me about it. What we're able to do, in effect, here this afternoon, today, where we will be discussing things and angles that would be very, very difficult to discuss in a Cambridge seminar room, is how we might coordinate between the square, the new towers, and the old towers. It's a great challenge before us, but I know from the caliber of the leadership here, the caliber of supporters, prospective supporters, the students I've corresponded with from Ralston over the years, that the time is now. We can rise to that challenge, and it's going to be transformational for the institutional landscape of the West. Thank you.